Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Startup Grind. My name is Robert Weese, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's session. Today is called Planes, Trains, Automobiles, and Boats. And in a couple of minutes, you're going to meet our four panel members to talk about transportation and how it's changing at an amazing pace. We're going to look at transportation in Canada, as well as specifically in the Durham region, and talk about how we are at the forefront of many exciting new developments. I'd like to remind you that Startup Grind is brought to you by the Spark Center in partnership with Launch Lab. That's another fellow regional innovation center based out of the Kingston area. We'd also like to thank Spark's elite partners, MNP Assurance and Accounting Services, Berskin Parr Law, Durham Recruiting, Roughly Insurance, Finance Without Borders, and Charest Law Professional Corporation. The Government of Canada recently passed the legislation to make today, September 30th, a federal statutory holiday called National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. It provides an opportunity to recognize and commemorate the tragic history and the ongoing legacy of residential schools in Canada, to honor their survivors, their families, and the community. In light of this important milestone, I'd like to ask you to join us for a moment of silence to remember the thousands of children who never returned home and the survivors of the residential school system. Thank you. Before I welcome the panelists, I'd like to remind you the purpose of Startup Grind. It's to share ideas and insights. Now, I don't want to be the only one asking questions here. So please type your questions into the chat box and I'll relay them to the panel. And if there's a specific panelist you'd like to ask that question to, please make sure you let me know in the chat. So let's spread the word about the great things that are happening in the Durham region. We have four guests joining us today: Riyad Kadri, Nathan Bowman, Lorraine Hunick, and Bernard Gonzalez. They're all members of our panel, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So Nathan, can I call on you to start with a brief introduction and let us get to know you?
Sure thing, Bob. Thank you very much. Thanks to Startup Grind and Spark Center. It's great to be here. Hello, everyone. My name is Nathan Boland. I'm the general manager here at BCS Automation. BCS is an industrial automation company located in Belleville, Ontario, so we're about 2 hours east of Toronto. Over the last 32 years, we've been servicing customers in Ontario, Canada, and around the world. We've always maintained slow and steady growth, and we currently have a team of 20 people. They're all based out of our Belleville office. We've focused on both land-based industries such as cement and manufacturing, as well as the marine industry on the Great Lakes and offshore oil and gas. What I'll be talking about quite a bit today is what we've been doing more recently in our involvement with the National Shipbuilding Strategy. So we've been supplying power distribution and control and monitoring equipment to new build vessels for the Royal Canadian Navy and the Canadian Coast Guard. So this is new for BCS. We're now working directly with shipyards and with the end user, which is ultimately Canada in the form of the Navy and the Coast Guard. So we've been introduced to this world, and we are finding our way along and having some success, and still feel we have lots to learn and a long way to go. We've recently purchased an old fire hall and converted it into a modern office and manufacturing space here in Belleville. This is where we design all our equipment and we build out of the same manufacturing space. We currently have the strongest team we've ever had. Several key members of our team have over 20 years experience, and we have new, younger people coming in that are really finding their groove after 5 to 10 years, and that team just continues to blow me away. And so my role here at BCS is to give them the tools they need and find new challenges for them. So welcome everyone. I just pass it on to Lorraine Hunick. If you could introduce yourself. Lorraine, hello.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Nathan. Thank you, Bob. And of course, thanks to Startup Grind and Spark Center, for the opportunity to be here. I lead the rapid transit and transit-oriented development team in the region of Durham. And I'm beyond grateful that the elected officials in the region of Durham understood the connection between investment and public infrastructure and the opportunity to continue to grow our economy. And it's quite interesting to hear Nathan talk about the young people that are blowing his mind. And if we don't provide the opportunity to connect people in equitable ways, in ways that don't impact the environment, that offer a range of options and choices, and if we don't leverage the value of the government investment in transit, I think we're doing a disservice to our community. So at the end of the day, what I'm doing today for the region of Durham is to help advance the Lakeshore Go East extension to Bowmanville in the form of 4 new transit stops, and helping to understand how we're going to leverage the investment in that transit service and create dynamic, vibrant, walkable, sustainable communities with a range of opportunities and housing types, mixed commercial, high-tech, clean, innovative uses, jobs, so that people who are on this call, who are running independent businesses, taking risk, growing their company through all of the stages that it takes to get to where you want to be, that there are people who can help you and they want to live in Durham region. They can afford to live in Durham region. They can age in Durham region, that we are a leading edge dynamic environment for all stages of life and all stages of innovation. And that includes the mobility and the transit choices itself. Today, it's about a heavy rail train extension. It's about our bus rapid transit project through downtown Durham region leading to Toronto. It's about our Simcoe Street rapid transit corridor that hasn't even been planned yet. All of this is about connecting people to opportunity, unlocking the value of that investment, because it's taxpayer investment, and we need to capitalize on it, get the most bang for that dollar that we are spending your money on, leveraging it to make sure we're properly serving and growing and innovating for the future, and that we are not redundant, we are not stagnant. And so the opportunity to be here, speaking amongst people who I admire, having run a small business, 2 of them myself, I know how hard this is. I don't know a lot about growing and the dynamic areas that people have to face, and the stressful, nights losing sleep about how to keep the electricity on, etc. I know that those are very, very difficult things to do, and people work very hard. And I'm hoping that my small contribution in the bigger picture of our economic diversity in this region is to grow opportunities to support and assist growth, innovation, and economic development. And I'm really excited to introduce our next panel member, that is Bernard Gonsalves.
Thank you, Lorraine, and many thanks to the Spark Center for having us here. We're very excited to be here today. And I guess I would like to start off with, quite naturally so, by championing the aviation cause. And I'd like to start off with an old saying that goes, a mile of highway will take you 1 mile, but a mile of runway will take you anywhere. And there's really no hype in this statement. It is true. And in fact, extend that runway to a couple of miles, which is what the runway length at Toronto Pearson is, and you can pretty much go nonstop to anywhere on this planet. So my name is Bernard Gonzalez, and I am the founder and CEO of Flightex. We are a proud Durham-based startup. As a company, Flightex organizes large global aerospace data sets such as our wind, temperatures, the rules of the sky, airplane and engine characteristics of over 200 airplanes, all rolled into our proprietary algorithms to optimize flight costs and revenue for over 400 airlines and air traffic agencies all over the world. So we at Flightex have built our services on the cloud in a way to help these 400 airlines and air traffic agencies to bridge a huge market need by providing off-the-shelf products that their business managers already expect, but they just cannot afford or develop quickly in-house. So we provide air traffic charge invoice management solutions, flight trajectory optimization algorithms, and all fused in a global aeronautical data platform that are all emerging tools that airlines can deploy now without capital expenditure as the means to maximize their revenue opportunities. So that's a little bit of what we do, and I really look forward to this discussion. And with that, I would like to invite you all to join me backstage, and hoping for an exciting discussion. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Bernard, and welcome. As I mentioned a little earlier, we were having trouble getting Rad on, and they're still working on that. So we are just going to continue on as you're doing it. And I just want to remind anybody who's listening in, this was all sparked from the Spark magazine called the Planes, Trains, Automobiles edition. I don't know if you ever have read the Spark magazine. A couple of months ago, we had a huge issue on cannabis. There is some really great stuff in here featuring what's happening in the area, metro links, what's going on in with the regional airports scheduled possibly for man, I got to find out where I'm living now, for Pickering. And what's been going on. You know, you had mentioned the point as we were going on, Lorraine, about the Eastern Corridor. And I want to tell you that that's exactly what brought my wife and I to Ajax. We lived out in Clarkson in Mississauga on the West End. And as soon as that corridor opened up to nonstop from Ajax downtown, we sold our place in Mississauga. We were in a highly dense area and moved out here where there's room to move. If I look out over my screen right now, I'm looking out at Lake Ontario. It's the quality of life that you've got when you can be out here. And I can see Nathan in the background. He spins around. He's looking out over the Bay of Quinte. So it's been great. If you're interested in the Spark magazine, it's called thespark.ca. Just go to thespark.ca and you can sign up for an e-copy. I get an e-copy, but I still like to grab the hard copy as much as possible. So on that note, Nathan, I want to get back to you because shipbuilding is something that was huge in Canada 100 years ago, 75 years ago, and it's almost, you hardly ever hear about it now. What's happening there? Can you take a few minutes and kind of walk us through not only the changes where you're impacting, but why Canada all of a sudden?
Sure. Yes, Bob. It's because the federal government has created a national shipbuilding strategy. So this has been in place since 2010, and we've chosen 2 shipyards to be the main builders of ships for our Navy and our Coast Guard. So that's Seaspan Shipyards in Vancouver, and it's Irving Shipyards in Halifax. So this is a long-term plan and strategy to rebuild our industry. It's been over 20 years since we've built large ships in this country. We did have a good history, but we've lost it because we've lost the talent because we weren't doing it. So instead of buying ships from other countries, we know we can do it. We have some of the infrastructure, and with Canada's commitment to do this over the next 30 years and build, almost 50 vessels, that's allowing this to happen. And just because we're building them in Vancouver and in Halifax doesn't mean that others can't participate right here in Ontario, and they are. There's 800 small and medium businesses across the country participating in building these new ships, and a lot of them are right here in Ontario. There's other great shipbuilding history in St. Catharines and Port Weller Dry Docks, and now Heddle is participating now in the National Shipbuilding Strategy. So they're bringing more pieces in, and it's we need more from Ontario, because Ontario, when we're working with other parts of the country, Ontario has often been the leader, and there's lots of good infrastructure here and talented people. So it's great to see. It's the largest procurement in Canadian history over a long period of time. It's different for BCS because it takes a while to get going, but once we get in rhythm and we figure out how to get involved and the best way to get involved, then it's providing all kinds of new opportunities with the length of these projects, and we can count on continuing to work with new partners in Vancouver and Halifax to continue to build these ships.
Excellent. Excellent. Oh, and Bernard, I want to switch over to you for a sec. You and I first met a couple of years ago at a hot desk in the Spark Center. And when I asked what your business was doing, here is this two people sitting at a couple of hot desks. And as we're going through it, you're telling me how many clients you've got worldwide. What brought you to the Durham region in the aviation field?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. So I guess aviation is very ubiquitous. So I guess we were, and that's the nature of the business we're in. We can be sitting at a hot desk in the Durham region at the Spark Center, but be servicing over 400 airlines and air traffic agencies in the way we work and the way we set up our business model. So we are actually in the business of when we start off in the Spark Center with focusing on our four-dimensional trajectory, our algorithms, which is really it's a very interesting concept for when you look at an airplane as a heavier than air object. It's actually in a state of sustentation. It's floating in the sky, and it's very sensitive to winds and upper temperatures. And that's really what we focused on back in 2019 when we started off working with algorithms. And what that does is it really addresses an $80 billion fuel problem that the airlines are burning today, and also addresses the 488 million tons of carbon emissions in the atmosphere. So we went about it by bringing these algorithms, which really look at an airplane and find the shortest distance that it should travel. And that being said, it's really, when you look at a flight from Toronto to Vancouver, it's about half an hour shorter. It's half an hour longer than on the way back. Everything else being the same. So this is where we spent a lot of time and energy and effort to get these algorithms up and running and hosted them on a cloud-based platform, so that any airline, any part of the world could hook onto our system and get that intelligence of what that route should be and fly the quickest route, burn less fuel, and reduce emissions. 1 kilo of fuel saved is 3.15 kilos of carbon emissions. And also saves on an airplane cost, which is the most expensive investment for an airline.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
So that was really what drove us into starting off small, but also realizing that we had a tremendous amount of capability working off a cloud-based solution and working on a software as a service model.
Excellent, excellent, and that is so important. And as I've been reading more after seeing the article about your company and getting more into what's happening, it's very interesting what's going on. We keep hearing about battery-operated electric planes in the future, but there's still, what can we do today? And this isn't a question; it's just that the comment is, what can we do today? And you're answering that question, and how, in terms of saving carbon, saving money, shortening routes. Believe me, when I fly, I want the shortest route possible. So Lorraine, let me swing around to you for a second. You must have just a crazy difficult job because you have got government, private industry interested. You have got the general public interested. How do you balance all those things? And governments are 4 years, maybe even 2 years, and so they're making decisions and changing. Doesn't your hair turn gray?
Yes, and that's why there's this thing called color. So,
or you just lose it.
or you just lose it. But what is interesting in Ontario, and it was so fantastic to hear what both Nathan and Bernard had to say, the underpinning of what I'm hearing is innovation and entrepreneurship, and that government understands intrinsically what its role is and what its role should not be. So for obvious reasons, governments are not necessarily in the innovation space, but we need to create the opportunity to allow the private sector to flourish, to grow. And a 4-year political timeframe is very difficult. But if you read some of the articles that you saw in the Spark magazine, for example, the GO procurement, the shipbuilding procurement, these transcend a 4 or 5 or 8 year political timeframe. And the commitment that governments make to involving the private sector so that we continue to underlie our principles of serving the public, but doing that in an efficient way, that is where, you don't need the hair color, because we often have more alignment than people realize. I'm in the most fortunate space of trying to bring the private sector into some of the transit-oriented communities, placemaking that would be that is a natural onset of transit investment, and that's new for Ontario, not newish for Ontario. And there's great opportunity here, and this is why I'm so honored to be speaking on a panel amongst people who wake up in the morning and look at an object or look at a process or look at a structure and say, how do I do this better? And the region of Durham understands the intrinsic growth opportunities with innovation. And make, connecting people to opportunity. That's just a small part of the big culture that's growing here in Durham. So yes, there's frustration like anything. I've done a ton of P3 work in my life, so I understand where's the right risk transfer for the private sector or the public sector, and it's actually really fun.
Excellent. And Nathan, you had a question?
Yeah, just from a small business perspective, when you're starting to work on government projects. I know BCS was always very hesitant to do that. And, it's how does a small company trust that the projects are going to move forward? So when we're making investments, that they're going to pay off in the long term? Because, often, the government makes a big announcement and then we stick our neck out and hire people, get training, infrastructure, and then it either stalls or maybe it doesn't happen. How do you know what to do? I mean, we've done that, and I feel it's been a risk for us, and so far so good. But if you're getting into it, how do you know?
I think that you've hit the nail on the head. And the little bit that I'm taking with me throughout my career is that the certainty that individual companies and individual decision makers like you need, that comes from partnerships. If it's cracking the affordable housing issue, if it's ensuring that there's adequate support for innovation and protection, it's got to be about partnerships. It's got to be about understanding the link between certainty and risk, that continued support and growth, sector-specific, efficient approaches to an outcomes-based solution. That's what government, in my mind, should be doing. And when you can see a long-term commitment that is locked in stone, you're more likely to act. And I think that's where partnerships and forums like these continue to educate both decision makers and private sector entities. They'll say, I'm not touching that. That's got too much hair on it, unless you give me this. And that's where the collaboration and the opportunity comes in. Because you're right, there's doggers out there that are not going to be safer places, or at least constant places to invest. And so this kind of communication helps folks sharpen their pencils to get to opportunities where people will actually say, this is worth my time and energy and my skill set.
Excellent. Bernard, I want to come back over to you for a second. As a, almost a micro company in terms of your size, how do you get in front of, and this is more a question for all of our inventors, founders that are on the line, how do you get in front of these large companies and get them to take you seriously? And I think it kind of comes to Nathan's point too. It's, if I invest in IBM, and I mean invest as in I buy their product, IBM's there, the chances of something going wrong are pretty small. But when I start looking at small companies, big companies get nervous. How do you address that?
Well, I think one of the key strengths in our setup, Bob, is that as a founder team, we have a diverse set of, we have 4 nationalities, 150 years of collective experience in aviation. We've worked in airports, airspace, global routes and networks. So we worked with airlines like Emirates, Singapore Airlines, Air France, Air Canada, and also with trade associations like the National Air Transport Association. I also sat on the advisory committee to the board of NAV Canada, and also served as an observer on a standard-setting body, a UN standard-setting body in Montreal, which is ICAO. So, in simple terms, I think we value what we bring to the table in understanding how the aviation space works, and we also know the pain points, having being in management in these positions. So I guess we kind of empathize with what the airlines are going through, but at the same time, we've also diversified a bit in what we do with COVID, and we can actually translate those business needs into technology solutions, which is where the airlines have been struggling for a while. So there's several sort of disconnects, if you like, in an airline. One is that they're very risk averse. They're not willing to take any risks. Spirit Airlines went down for 2 days because legacy systems on the back end were so interdependent, and it just came crashing down. It took them a while to recover. The other problem is that the number of processes that an airline has to go through to get a plane in the air to its correct destination with all its people, cargo, and fuel is just astronomical. And there are huge buffers in everything airlines do. So there's fuel carried on board the airplanes. They overbook their flights. They carry extra catering. Aircraft schedules have got huge buffers in them, and the list goes on. So there's a very well-used cliche in the airline world called SOPs. That's standard operating procedure. They just do things because they were told to do it. So all that said, I think the problem is that we've kind of understand the problems, and we've brought up these technology solutions that would add new meaning to what the airlines are actually going through now with the need to reduce the cost by 30% just to break even in 2021. So I think we've been noticed by the bigger companies who actually do not have the agility of a startup. And we actually, in this week, we're finalizing an agreement, partnership agreement with a Fortune 500 company, actually to package our technology product under their brand, and we basically piggyback on their global marketing team, and that's the kind of partnerships that we really can catapult ourselves into.
All right, thank you. And Nathan, before I go over to you, I just want to mention to everybody, I'm not the only one asking questions here, not just the panelists. So in the chat, please put your questions, and we'll keep an eye out for them and bring them in, because we want you engaged. We want to know what you want to hear. We've got 3 people up here that have got great information in different areas. Let's get the questions asked. So I'm going to throw back to Nathan. You've been doing this for quite a while. I think about 18 years, 20 years. What are some of your challenges dealing with the big companies?
Well, you have to stick with it and find your way in. So like a bit what Bernard was talking about is, when we thought we've got the experience in the marine industry and we can contribute something to these new ships that Canada's building. But if you take our control panel and knock on the door at D&D, they go, don't talk to me. We want a ship. We go to PSBC and they buy it for us. So you go down the road to PSBC and they go, no, we're not buying your little control system. We're buying a whole ship from a shipyard. So go talk to them. So then you go down to the shipyard and you go, I got this great product. It's going to work well on this ship. And they go, well, yeah, we don't need this little product. We have an integration team that we hire. So maybe that's Lockheed Martin. So then you go down to Lockheed Martin with your control panel and they go, well, that's great. That looks good. But, we break it up into these systems that go on board. So you have to keep finding your way to get there. And start small with something that one of these main system providers needs, and they need equipment that's got Canadian content, that's built in Canada. That can be your way in, and then you can start to learn more once you're kind of on the inside. But for years we were on the outside, just trying to figure it out. We knew we had a good product, we knew we had a good team, but it's tough to find the way in. But meet with people. You got to go to trade shows. You got to get out there in Ontario. There's other companies closer than you think that are already doing this, and you can help them out.
And it'd be interesting to know, Nathan and Bernard, is it all about, they say you only have 3 bullet points before you've lost someone's attention. Is it about the messaging, about the problems you're solving, or the product, what the amazing thing is about what you can bring to the table? Like, I'm hearing Bernard and I'm thinking, wow, look at how much you can solve so much of our climate and sustainability issues with innovative approaches to fuel consumption. Is it knowing your top 3 bullet points and getting that message on point every single time?
Well, if I can just start off answering that question, Lorraine, with the approach that we've taken as a business, by and again, disruption is an overused word. So I think what we do is really see where we can complement what's already happening with some value add. So we basically position ourselves with our ability to handle big data. So just to give an example, a Boeing today, a 737, which is a very common used airplane in North America, that generates about 10 terabytes of data every 30 minutes of flight. And over a 6-hour flight, that could mean as much as 240 terabytes of data on a single flight. And when you walk into a backroom office in an airline today, they're still back in their legacy systems of the 1980s. And where we feel we can make a difference is to take away all that complexity of hosting software, buying new software, signing 10-year lock-in contracts, and spending millions of dollars and waiting for many years before you get ROI to actually host the cloud and provide the value add through APIs and connect existing systems. So it's really finding a needle in the haystack, which is possible, which is always impossible. And now that haystack is actually growing exponentially. So what we do is we've actually managed to handle a huge amount of data sets. So today, as we speak, we get about 30,000 flight routes that you see as a passenger on your seat back. We can actually bring that data in. We can match it up against 9-second actual position points as the airplane is moving, and that's about 9 million data points each day. So really, what we see, where we see this going is be able to bring in a lot of the predictive analytics, handling big data, and positioning ourselves and adding value to our customers where they do not have the ability to actually do this now. So I think that's where I think we want to be in the front end to drive this way of actually addressing a problem, chasing a solution, which is exactly the opposite of most of the aviation solutions, which have been solution chasing problems.
Lorraine, can I throw a quick question over to you? What's the region looking at when it comes to new innovation? I recently saw the autonomous bus running around in Whitby. These are all exciting things. How far off is something like that?
It's here. And it is absolutely here. And I am delighted to say that colleagues at the region are working with Avon, pardon me, it'll become Oven, and others. The innovation, coupled with the energy sector that's already here, the Wave, that's the autonomous vehicle. This is the first of its kind. It involves integrating this autonomous vehicle service into actual route scheduling with Durham Region Transit and using smart technology to do that. The players involved in that are rooted in technology and things of experience happening here in Durham Region. Transit signal priority, it's another area where the region is working on extremely future thinking things to save fuel, increase sustainability, understanding the innovation corridor from Waterloo to Oshawa. There's contributions, and then further on to Belleville and Ottawa. There is opportunity now that we can all talk without having to be together in the same room. That innovation is occurring particularly in the mobility space in Durham Region, and it's an offshoot, I believe. Folks may know a little bit about our roots here. I would say innovation culture has existed here ever since Sam McLaughlin started doing his thing, and that culture has permeated through mobility.
And kind of quick follow-up to that, one of the challenges that I hear regularly from other people in the community, especially if they're running larger businesses with multiple shifts, is what happens when Durham Region shuts down? Is autonomous going to give us opportunities there where it can run 24/7, or is it just a new fad that's going to replace a bus?
We're hoping that this will be your first mile, last mile solution. So, for example,
can you explain that, by the way, because a lot of people don't know first mile, last mile?
Absolutely. We've invested in very large infrastructure systems, like a heavy rail transit system that's going to get you to Oshawa Station or Whitby Station. In the case of Wave, you need to get to another place after you've landed at the Whitby GO station. And right now, the majority of people jump in a car and then fight with everybody else to get out of the GO parking lot and then go and do their thing. The Wave, for example, will help overcome that first mile and that last mile from your mobility hub. And if we are able to sculpt bespoke options that are truly convenient for people, then we are responding to needs. We are keeping vehicles off of the road. We are reducing GHG. We're providing options that don't involve purchasing an asset that declines in value the moment you drive it off the parking lot. There's nothing wrong with cars, but they're not for everyone. And so the whole point is to be able to provide service. I think of where we might be moving from bricks and mortar right now to a more warehouse-based delivery system for retail. Durham Region Transit recently changed its service to help the night shift. We'll have a Blue Line, that's 24-hour service. I hope innovation and technology of the future allows us to have more automated service with less labor inputs, making this more efficient for everyone and truly responding to the needs of the commuter, whether you're going to bring your kids to daycare or you're going to a job or you're going to school. that we're actually creating bespoke solutions for everybody in our community.
Excellent. And just to let people know, we have a client that's been featured a number of times at Spark called Hoppin Technologies, no relation to the platform we're on right now. And what they do is they do that last mile. If you can get your employees to the Oshawa GO train station, they have an algorithm to figure out how many employees you've got, how they need to, when they need to be in the office or when they need to be at the station. And it actually works with other transits like private transit companies, and will actually put routes to pick these people up after hours and get them there. So that's, if you're looking for more information on that, Hoppin Technologies is someone to look at. Nathan, I want to come back to you. There was a question about this talk, small Canadian companies talking to large companies. And the question was, can you give us another example of how you found your way to work with a large company?
Sure. Yeah, I think that you have to focus on what advantages you have as a small company. And a lot of the times that is speed, like you're faster, which these larger companies can't do. And they sometimes need that. So when you see that opportunity, you hustle and you get them what they need really quickly. They're used to having to send, in terms of contracting, something back for a signature in Germany to head office, and it takes forever for them to set up a team. You've got an advantage as a small company to do things that they can't do, and so take advantage of that.
I want to throw a personal note in there, selling business technologies. My competitors in my day were IBM and Xerox. And we were a little 7-person company competing with IBM and Xerox. And there used to be the line, nobody ever got fired by buying IBM. Where if you made a mistake and bought our property, it could be, our product, you could be in trouble. So what we did is we talked about that. We were nimble, we were faster, we were way ahead of them in technology. And in a lot of cases, companies would come back and say, well, we can invent this ourselves. And I think this is to Bernard's comment. They can invent it, but it could take them 2 years or 3 years to get their technology people to do it. And you pull your technology people away from other things that you're paying them to do right now. So why wouldn't you bring Bernard in and his company who already done it? And so it sounds like, Bernard, you've got a client who's actually looking to resell your product under their own banner, like a white label, or I guess that's what we call it in the sales industry. Oh, you're off.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, I think it's that, but also a partnership agreement. So we basically carry our own strengths. So we want to focus on what we do best, which is providing a technology solution. And the Fortune 500 company carries in with them a large customer base of over 170 airlines with their existing products. And they've got a huge marketing team and sales network as well. So it's really a synergy of what each other can do best together to add that value, which we basically brought in as an idea from the team. So we actually and COVID actually made that difference for us. So we found we actually converted a problem into an opportunity as well, where we had to diversify and pivot to this new product line of ours, which is Flightex, which is the air traffic billing application. But having said that, I think it's also the nature of the product that or the kind of business we run. Aviation is a very ubiquitous business, so the fact that we can host our product on a software as a service model means that we're not selling soap from the back of a truck, but we basically have a global market that we can service through a cloud platform, and I think that's a huge advantage for us. That's where we can be sitting at the Spark Center in a small office in a cubby hole there, but be servicing a huge international customer base.
I'm just going to remind everybody, if you'd like to get involved in the chat, please type your comments in the chat box, and we'll make sure we get in there and ask those questions. Once again, our 3 panelists are here sharing planes, trains, automobiles, and boats, what's happening in the region of Durham and across Canada when it comes to technology. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us on this. I am going to ask one thing of our panelists. And this is one of my pet peeves that I see all the time, especially when we get these private and government groups together. It's the use of TLA, 3-letter acronyms. What the heck does that mean? We're going to have a lot of people out there going, what are you talking about here? So we talked about Avon, and we're throwing out some other ones. So please take a second if you're going to use a 3-letter acronym and let us know what it means, because you know it in your industry. That's industry jargon. We don't. And I have to say, working with the Spark Group, I can't believe how many 3-letter and 4-letter and 6-letter acronyms that get thrown around at all times. So keep us in touch. Let us know what it means, and it's going to make it a lot easier as we're moving forward. Nathan, I want to throw this to you. Are you working a lot on R&D? And is there a percentage of time you're spending on R&D, or what actually gets the new idea to come out? And let me throw that one to you.
We'd like to have a need. We'd like to have a customer requirement. We'd like to have something to drive towards. We don't, put in R&D dollars to something because we think somebody might want it. We like to start with, what do you want, and listen to our customers. And then if it doesn't exist in the way that they want it, then we start working on that problem. And one thing that maybe Bernard and I have in common here is that he's already talked about is sometimes it's not, we are pitching a product that we think is cool and has a lot of features, but what they want is, can you just make it a little bit lighter and a little bit smaller? And then that becomes the biggest challenge. And if you can't ignore that, because sometimes that's not what we think about the most, but an end user that has limited space on a ship or a plane or a train, that's really what they want. And I know that we've got our product on board vessels just because it's, a few millimeters smaller than anybody else. So the innovation is really in the size and the weight. The weight leads to more environmentally friendly. They, with the vessel not having it as light as it can be, then they can propel it that much easier.
Yeah,
Bernard?
if I can just add to what Nathan said, and I think that's an excellent point. And I think R&D is a lot of what we're about as well. And again, that takes time, effort, money, and I just want to recognize the fact that the Durham region has been supportive to us in terms of going through that R&D process as well. With we've had NIRA grant, we've had support through local colleges and universities, and that's been a very rewarding experience. So I just want to recognize that fact as well. So as a small startup, that is part of what we do, and we depend on the local, on local help, so that we can make our way through this process. So, and we also, again, we are also in an R&D process with 3 Canadian universities, actually, the Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, Memorial in St. John's, and Waterloo, where we are partnering with Boeing to do some airspace optimization in the North Atlantic, which is one of the world's busiest oceanic airspaces. So we really thrive on R&D, and that's really where we can make a difference. Jump ahead of what the daily run-of-the-mill is within the aviation business to make that difference.
And that's, I think, from the Spark Center, that's one of the real challenges we see. We probably entertain 200 to 300 new clients, and I'm sure Launch Lab out in the Kingston area is doing the same thing. And we always like to break into 2 buckets: who's coming with completely new innovation, and who's taking an idea and innovating on it. And I think the clients that are coming in with something completely new are the ones who have the biggest challenge, because you've got to take someone, whether it's in aerospace, transportation, construction, whatever, you've got to take them and say, you're thinking this way. And I think, Nathan, you mentioned that earlier, and we want to move you way over here. And that's scary, as opposed to, we've got something, we're just going to make it a little bit better. And how? So Lorraine, that's going to bring me back to you. In your day, 9 to 5, Monday to whatever day it continues on to, are you basically interacting with, and I hate the word stakeholders because it's kind of like with the public, with the private, with the industry, with other governments trying to bring this all together? It must be a juggling match of gargantua proportions.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, it is still, it's an old word, but a good one, stakeholders. And I think it comes back to what we've been talking about today is folks recognizing who's good at what, and government. In my role, my job is simply to connect people to the opportunities. So in the case of heavy rail GO extension to Bowmanville, this current government seeks to leverage the value of the transit investment and have those who are benefiting from the increased real estate values from that transit, they will pay for the new GO stations. And that necessarily usually turns into real estate developers. So in my world, I'm looking at leveraging the value of that increase in the real estate with Metrolinx, and working with the private sector to say, how do you engage, in this case, in the delivery of public infrastructure for heavy rail transit? And to do that, then you need to take a look at, well, what's creating the value? It's not just the folks who are building the actual train, the signal system and track in the corridor. It's also the planning department that is entitling the real estate with certain development rights. That's what creates the value. So now you're bringing in all the planning world and the folks that involve that kind of policy. And never, ever to be forgotten is the actual taxpayer who wakes up every day and, gives a big chunk of their paycheck to all of us trying to put this together in an efficient way. And so there are a number of stakeholders that we are accountable to, and there are a number of stakeholders that we must consult with to achieve the outcomes that this government has mandated that we do. And understanding the role of the private sector, working in partnership with the public sector, to me, that's the sweet spot where we get the conditions for success. And there are myriad balancing acts, but this government, and I think many others would agree, that effort is worth it to get these more efficient outcomes that are private sector driven in nature, underpinned by a government investment. And I know working in the absence of government investment, it's a different space. And the structure that comes with a government commitment on a procurement or et cetera, that does sort of serve as the backbone, but that's all it is. And then we need to innovate with others. And I'm fortunate enough to have some public and private sector experience to know sometimes folks need to stay in their swim lanes and consult and create the right environment for that collaboration to occur. And that's what I'm trying to do in respect, this case, heavy rail.
And a quick follow-up to that, if I think about Union Station, high rises everywhere, I go out, as I'm moving out, especially west, I see a lot of high density in that area. Is that something we're looking at here? Is it higher density manufacturing or commercial around these hubs in the Durham region? Or is it trying to be a blend of higher density housing, and so we've got a feeder into these businesses?
That's exactly right. And if you think about, it's a blend. Now, we know that in order to continue to live the good life that we have here in Ontario, we need to adopt more sustainable practices in making better use of our real estate, and going up, not out, is one of the ways to do it. One of the other ways to do it is to say, okay, we've invested billions of dollars in transit, and now we have an opportunity to move people back and forth. We don't necessarily need to do the salmon run into the downtown financial district anymore. In the areas where these stations exist, the things that Bernard is doing in his office are compatible with residential uses, to my knowledge. I don't think there's any heavy testing going on in pollution and noise and vibration. There is absolutely no reason why we can't create vibrant communities with a mix of uses, employment and residential uses. so that we knock off this. The only way to exist is to stand at a platform and get your way into downtown Toronto and make your way back and spend all these hours of your life commuting rather than with your children or improving your community or whatever floats your boat. So if we are able to capitalize on a little bit higher density and be really flexible in how we do analysis impact, or what is an appropriate mix of uses, that's where we're going to see innovation, clean tech. All that stuff can exist in hubs around stations where people actually live. And people can get up in the morning, put on a winter coat and walk. They don't need to spend time shoveling snow off a car or waiting on a platform in -30. You've got what you need right in your vicinity. And quite frankly, that's what younger people are looking for. We're building for the next generations, not for people my age. That is not what this is about.
And I'm going to throw another plug into a Spark client. We've got a new one that is actually making a heated mat for driveways and sidewalks. So we're never going to shovel again. I think that's coming down the pipe. Nathan, I want to throw back over to you for a minute. What are you excited about in terms of technologies? What do you think could be game changers? Or are you sitting back going, I'm going to watch it happen and we're going to see as it's happening, where to go with it?
Yeah, I don't know if excited is the right word, because sometimes it does make me nervous. But some things that we're seeing that
fair enough
that are pretty cool. 3D modeling, which has been around, is used all the time now, and we really have to embrace it. In the electrical world, it didn't really always make sense for us to do 3D modeling, but you have to know it. You have to be able to receive a 3D model, walk through it on your own, comment on it if you're going to be working with other people. So we're starting to see that now. We have to have those tools. It wasn't something that was in our tool belt before. And then taking that to the next level, what's exciting is seeing digital twins. So seeing a digital twin of a plane or a ship, where it's taking that 3D model, but it really works virtually. It's the buttons are there. When you press them, they do something virtually. You can walk around when you hit an emergency stop, and then you're looking for the exit. You can experience all these things before the product's ever built. And this is what we're seeing with shipyards, is they definitely want to do this, and they see it as a way to be more efficient on the build, but also as a sales tool. They want to go out internationally and say, this is our product. Would you like to jump inside from wherever you are in the world and walk around and see how it works? That's really happening now, and that's something that we're getting involved in.
Excellent. Bernard, how about on your side? Any leading edges you're seeing happening in the airline industry? Maybe not directly related to your product, but are exciting changes?
Yes. Well, firstly, I want to echo what Nathan said about digital twins. That's very, very much the trend that we're also taking in terms of ourselves, but also in aviation, where you do not have to work with mathematical models that are published in an airframe manual issued by Boeing and Airbus, but you can actually recreate a new living mathematical real-life model of an engine or an airplane. That's certainly very much realistic, real time for us. But what we're seeing as an industry, I think three main trends about. One is the acceleration of personalization. So really, with if you know what the customer pain points are, you can actually build solutions to address these known problems, and that's how we are planning to also deploy our data as a service platform on a global marketplace through APIs. The second trend that we will see a lot in aviation is the DTC, or the direct to customer, to use the three-letter acronym. And this is what is better known as disintermediation, which is where Nike, Amazon, and others now go direct to the customer, and they've almost doubled their profit margins and also globalize their product. So again, you can use cloud technology to make Go ubiquitous through a SaaS offering. And that again is our strategy as we go direct to the customers with our pay-as-you-use, data as a service. So we basically charge on a per flight hit model for providing a data as a service. And I think the third part of it is the virtualization, which is really bundling a suite of travel products, if you like, and ancillaries. So airlines have done this by reusing big data, to bundle solutions. You talk of duty free excursions, meals, car rentals, and so on. So it's more than just an airplane. So they personalize and aggregate it to be delivered through a web-based platform. And if you look at Amazon, for example, they started off by building a website with a massive distribution and loyalty network, and now they're buying airplanes. AirAsia and Ryanair, they actually went the other way. They actually bought a huge number of airplanes, and now they're selling through websites. So either way, bundling and delivering is through a virtualized experience. Is really, I think, where the business is heading, and if it isn't, it should be heading that way.
Yeah. One of the advantages I have from where I sit right now is I actually look at the Ajax Waterfront Lakeshore Trail, and 2 years ago I remember seeing one person with an e-bike that was out there once in a while. Now on a daily basis, I'm seeing 5, 10, 20 families of e-bikes. So Lorraine, the question got asked there, and I think this is a great one about that last mile having facilities for that. So do we need plug-in stations at the GO train stations, not just for cars, but where I can plug in my e-bike when I'm gone for the day? What are some of your comments on the thoughts that the region or Metrolinx is having around that?
That's a great question. And when you think about right now, the future is electric. A lot of folks would say, hydrogen is our next energy source. How does government keep up with today and what's going on in the future and meet its liability responsibility concerns? So, for example, you're on the waterfront and you want to install electric charging stations for e-bikes and scooters, and we've just started the space where we're regulating this new, is it a vehicle? Is it a mobility aid? What is it? What happens when you hit someone and somebody has to go in the hospital? Is the town liable? And if you put in a charging station, how do you deal with those issues? And, we're moving slowly through them, but I think it is fair to say that people are starting to understand that the traditional forms of active transportation, walking or taking a bike, that's all changing. How we provide for that is changing. And as we continue to move forward and we see, further to another question, how do you stand up innovative first mile, last mile transit solutions that don't rely on government? I think what's happening is the trend is moving everybody in the same place. And I go back to partnerships. Understanding how humans are going to behave and the solutions that people are offering, government needs to adopt them. And I think you'll find in the region, there is a recognition of this. So you look at the success of the waterfront trail and the opportunities that are coming from that. Folks can move around without even getting near a highway system anymore. We're continuing to challenge ourselves and meet those really boring but important mundane issues. Like, they're not mundane, they're important and they're expensive. If you don't get the liability piece right, you're in trouble. But working around those issues and still protecting the safety of individuals. Metrolinx gets it too. The perfect example is all of the parking structures that have been built. These are huge, expensive assets. Are we going to park vehicles there at night and charge them? Is this where the fleet will go? One option. Metrolinx has a whole group of individuals who are trying to work with the private sector to start thinking about adaptive reuse of spaces and moving into the future. And so not all the answers are there, but I believe the first mile, last mile piece, folks understand that's the critical nut to crack. We know how to move people long distances. It's that last piece that we're working on, and e-scooters, e-bikes, micro transit, on-demand service, subcontracting out to the private sector. All of that is critical to success in that space.
Thank you. Nathan, I want to pull you in for a question about employment. We know that in the construction sector, I do work with a number of Construction Ontario vendors. They can't find people. Are you having challenges in the engineering side, bringing people in, or is this a high growth area and everybody who's looking for it? But are they looking for what's the sexy stuff as opposed to, are they even thinking about your technologies?
It's always challenging, but it's something that you have to take on. And I think you have to, have your expectations reasonable. People, when they come to work here, we hire a lot of young people that are early 20s, or they're just at a college or university, and they need time before they can be a productive member of our team. So they need training, and a lot of that training is internal here. So they need to work with experienced people, and then they'll come around. But you can't ask them to do everything the first day, and if they can't do it, you can't blame colleges or universities or just young people in general, which is what I hear sometimes. And these young people that we have are, they don't show up late. They're not up all night playing video games. These people are committed. They're smart. They're capable. They're dedicated to their work. They stay up all night sometimes on a ship trying to make something work, and they don't give up. They're incredible, and they just need a little bit of structure and a little bit of time, and then they're far smarter than I am, and they just will take off. Just give them a little bit of time.
And those are some of the people we want living close to our transit stations, because we need to provide a range of housing options so those people can start their careers in Durham region, and they're not boxed into solutions that don't really work for them. And you can't attract the talent that you need. And that is where this all comes together.
Yeah, we see young people that and maybe this is going to become more of a challenge with housing prices rising in our area, but we've had, young people would come here and buy a house and start a family, and those are great employees. They're committed. They want to make a lot of money, which is great, and they want to succeed. And that's it's awesome to see that over and over again.
Nathan, I think Lorraine's got that problem solved, because if we all move to last mile micro transit, then we can convert those parking garages into affordable housing.
Yeah.
Bernard, I want to zip back to you before we run out of time. How about your comments on people coming up behind you? 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it was everyone wanted to get into apps and gaming, and then blockchain was the buzzwords. Are people following up in your industry? Are you having trouble finding people in your industry?
Well, again, we just like Nathan described it, we depend a lot on, we do software development, and a lot of it goes to the cloud. So we are looking for specialized developers. But again, having said that, they come at a price. So we've had to actually go to the lower end of the pay scales, and we've actually been quite successful in opening our opportunity to younger kids who've got lots of ideas, and we give them a kind of a sandbox where they can thrive and come up with different ways of doing things. So, and that's one of the successes we found in the way we manage these millions of data points that we as flights go through every day. And we've come up with some very, very fancy solutions to actually to look at airplanes, to optimize flights before they can take off. So these are the backroom offices that Air Canada has got in Brampton, where all the planning is done, and where the routes that you see as the passengers in your seat back are developed. And when they're flying, you can actually simulate them. You can interface them with, you can overlay weather, convective weather, icing, turbulence, and so on. And when they land, we can actually recover all the data and do a 360 on it to come up with some predictive analytics on how much less fuel you could have actually taken because you're going to get shortcuts on the way in, and or how much more fuel do you need because you had a longer taxi. But back to the question, Bob, I think it's really it's it again it boils down to hiring, finding a fine balance between um, uh, having a productive, increasing your productivity, but at the same time, not having to pay, pay an arm and leg to get on developers.
Excellent. Great. Thank you very much. And Lorraine, I'm going to come back to you. Same sort of question. I can't say I think of a lot of our nieces and nephews and young people saying, I want to become an urban planner. It's what gets people into this industry? Is it they're looking at the new technologies, and because of their understanding of it, they go, there's more to it than just the technology? What moved you forward?
I think, everyone's different, of course, but the planning profession, it kind of starts with, gee, as a young person, you might look at something and say, I don't understand why it's that way. Why is that forest being taken down? Or how come I don't have this particular option to travel this way? And if you do a little bit of critical thinking, you go, that's because there's this whole group of people who make decisions about the use of land and how we're going to organize ourselves as communities. And that, if you want to impact some of those things, then that's kind of the place to be. That's kind of the first piece. And then the second piece, and it's funny you asked this, Bob. I just actually gave a talk this morning before this panel to the School of Urban and Regional Planning, the law students at Ryerson. And that's where I went to school. And you can be a generalist or you can be a specialist in this profession. There's a wide variety of opportunities that help you understand the sustainable use of our resources, that's social, economic, as well as physical, to better the community. You need to think about that in the context of taking away people's private rights or their property. You need to balance how you do that. And if that's of interest to you to understand that mix in Ontario, in this case, I've worked in Bermuda, I've worked in the Cayman Islands, it's a little different there, but the principles are always the same. You're taking away something from the individual for the good, the collective good. And you got to balance that because you can't take too much, in my view. And if that interests you, planning will open up a variety of doors for you. And you will get into this longer term thinking that I'm doing here with infrastructure. Or it might be, how do we design a park that truly reflects the needs of the children and the seniors and the middles who are actually going to use this space? So you can go quite broad, or you can go quite specific with this profession. And I think people are more aware, sustainably speaking, why are we doing it this way? Well, bring it back to some of those fundamental decisions that planners make, and you might get engaged in the profession.
Excellent. We're just about running out of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to hold you all to 60 seconds. Nathan, anything that you want to kind of throw in at the end? We've been talking so much about transportation. If there's something that's just kind of burning, we need to bring it up. You got a minute.
Thanks. I think that everyone here from Ontario has to realize that Ontario has a great reputation, and that's a resource that we can use. I remember when I first graduated from college, I had a job for a brief time in Toronto. It went on my resume that I worked in Toronto, and then I went out into the world. And when I got to other places in Canada with a suit and tie on and said that I'm from Ontario, I was shocked at the reactions. And they go, great, he must be great. He must know what he's doing. Of course I didn't, but I got hired and I started doing things. And I did this again in Europe, and Canada has a great reputation. So that Ontario has a lot to offer. And I see this now when we're selling to customers. They know we're a Canadian company. And especially if they know we're in Ontario, they know our infrastructure is strong. They know our supply chains are strong. We've got this, great highway 401 that, runs from Montreal to Windsor. That's a resource. The St. Lawrence Seaway and the Great Lakes, they're all really good things. We've got a great reputation, so you should use that to your advantage and protect it as well by continuing to do such great work.
Excellent. And just one quick question there at the end too. Do you work on partnerships with like Loyalist College or other colleges and universities for your programs?
Yes, yeah, we work with both Loyalist College and St. Lawrence College in Kingston, and it's a great mechanism to be proactive on your hiring. We had summer students this year, which is great to show them what we do, and we get a chance to get to know them. Where we might not always hire them right away, but maybe in 2 or 3 years they come back. They already know what it's all about. So that's working really well.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Bernard, same thing. 1-2 minutes, kind of wrap up things, ideas, things we didn't mention we should have brought up.
Well, I just want to say that we're very excited in what we're doing, and we just want to continue on this path. What really motivates us is, the way technologies companies like Amazon and eBay have evolved to deliver technology solutions. My former boss, Tim Clark, the chairman of Emirates, basically said there's a storm coming, and he was really talking about a seismic shift in technology, and we really want to be on the leading edge of this shift in technology to help the aviation industry weather the storm. So we're really excited to be on this path, and we might be small, but we do punch above our weight. We were chosen by the Canadian Trade Commission and Boeing Horizon X, the VCR, as one of the top 10 technology companies in Canada, and we really have we've made some good strides in this year, and hopefully we just want to stay on this path ahead. It brings back a saying from Boeing, which basically is 104 years old today, and to quote Boeing, they basically said that the first century of aerospace was defined by aerodynamicists, and the second century is going to be defined by chemists and mathematicians. It's going to be about algorithms. So that's really the space that we're really excited to be in, and you can only do so much with engines and airplanes. And I think to Lorraine's point, we have a commitment to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions as well, and that's where we really feel that we've got to remain on track, and although we're a small business based in Durham, we can really reach out to a global market, and we're really excited to be here.
Excellent. And congratulations on that. That's amazing to hear. And just to let you know, Bernard, I was at the Spark Center for the first time in 17 months yesterday, and I walked past your desk, and I'm sure once we all get back in there, it's getting closer to we can all start getting back and seeing each other, and a lot more of dynamics of the ideas will happen. So I look forward to seeing you. Lorraine, same thing. Anything kind of burning that we need to bring up in our last 60 seconds before we sign off?
I think I have to repeat what Bernard reiterated, that we all kind of need to continue to move forward in the lens of sustainability. And from our little plug at the region of Durham, our job, of course, is to support and to continue to foster innovation and culture, and thrilled to have been a part of this.
Right. Well, thank you all very much on behalf of Spark, on behalf of the group. And I just want to let everybody know too, we got a message from Riyadh that he couldn't make it in, something technology wise on his part. Really would have liked to have had him part of this panel where he got more into autonomous vehicles and what was happening there. So sorry, Riyadh. I know what's going to happen now is Startup Grind 2 or 3 months out is going to invite him back to have a one-on-one, and we can go in depth there. So to the three of you, Nathan, Bernard, Lorraine, thank you very much. I really appreciate all you've done and all you've given. And I'm sure from the audience, let's see some love from the audience in our chat box too. That would be great.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you all.
You're welcome, everyone. Great. So just once again, Nathan Bolin, Lorraine Hunick, and Bernard Gonzalez was our guests for our session today on Sparks, Startup Grind, planes, trains, and automobiles. You can get it at the, we'll put the address again for you. Startup Grind was brought to you by Spark in sponsorship with Launch Lab. That's Kingston's Area Regional Innovation Center. We work together on quite a bit of things together. The Spark magazine, you can find it at thesparkmagazine.ca. It is a wonderful read. I look forward to it every time. There's so much good stuff. It highlights what's happening in the area, but it also highlights Spark clients and things going forward. And if you haven't looked at the back issues, go on back and check them out too. There's so much information in there, really well put together. Congratulations to the Spark team for that. Now, you can also check out the Spark Center social pages, and you can register for the next Startup Grind, which comes up on Thursday, October the 21st. Now, for those of you who are usually on Startup Grind, you'll know that Katie Zeppieri is one of our moderators, often doing the same job I'm doing, moderating this discussion. Well, next month, we're going to turn the tables on Katie, and she is going to be in the hot seat. For those of you who don't know much about Katie's background, she's one of the leading voices and thought leaders on empowerment. Through her work as a social entrepreneur, she's an author, a TED Talk speaker, podcast host, influencer. She's on radio regularly. She's a forerunner in conversations around leadership, self-development, women in business, empowering women, youth, mental health, and business for social goods. I cannot keep up with her when I take a look at what she is doing out there. Katie is one amazing young woman. She's the founder and CEO of Girl Talk Speakers Bureau. It's Canada's premier female speakers bureau, representing women who are innovators in their industry. Now, that's not enough for Katie. She's also the founder and president of Mic Drop, which is a boutique marketing company that amplifies purpose-driven brands through event management, public relation, influencer marketing, and staffing. I love talking to Katie because I get so much introduction for her or information from her at all times. So if you want to be in on that discussion, once again, it is on Thursday, October 21st. Please get registered for that. On behalf of the Spark Center, Launch Lab, our panelists, I would like to thank you all for joining us today. My name is Robert Weese. Please go out there and make someone feel special today. Thank you all, and goodbye.